A little bit about your background. Could you give me your name and city of residence?
Okay, I'm John Fenimore, live in Selma, been around Selma all my life.
Okay.
And
Did you grow up in Selma then?
yes, I did. I moved to Selma when I was 4 years old. And of course, I stayed around Selma. In fact, after we got married, first house I lived in when I was 4, it's still standing, but they're keeping it because it's an antique. We can look out our front window and still see that house. That's how far I got away from home. So, but I've been around there. Went to Selma High School, graduated there in 58. And I guess that was about all there before. And then, of course, I'd done odd jobs, worked in mowed yards, and I worked filling stations and done a lot of farming. At that time, there was a lot of farms around. Worked at a grain elevator. My wife's mom and dad run a grain elevator in Selma, so I got in on that. So done a little bit of odds and ends like that, and really never been in a factory. Only we had one class trip, went to Ball Brothers and went through that. So that was as far as I knew about factories. Did know people that worked in the factory. Had a couple of neighbors at that time before I went to work there. My mother worked in the office at Warner Gear, Plant 1. And then, I had an uncle that was on plant protection. But other than that, see these people coming back and forth that work there, but that's...
Could you talk a little bit more about your mother's experience working at
Well,
Warner Gear?
She went, I'm not really sure when she went there. She used to work at Ball Stores. Was a manager on, I don't know, whatever, she worked there. So I know she was working there in, I'll say, mid-50s. I really don't know exactly when she hired in, because I know she got in there, and I know she worked in, I think it was purchasing, I can't even say it. But I know there was like 18 men and 3 women in that office. And I know she used to go home and talk about that, but she really liked it. And then, in 59, I heard that Warner Gear was going to hire. Of course, at that time, most of the factories in Muncie, which are not here now, were hiring. And in fact, I went to Delco. I worked for this lady, was A.J. Glazer's wife. And I was wanting to get into diesel mechanic at that time. And he took me to Delco and stuff, but I never actually went in the thing that was going to help me go to school. Instead of that, I went to work for here. But anyway, my mother I'd heard of this hiring, and she said, well, stick around home, and she'd call me, and she'd come in early. So, but I know she did enjoy it, and she was on a bowling team. We used to take her, wife and me used to take her once in a while, come and get her on bowling. But that's about all I know about her, what her job was. But,
well, for when she was working there and you were younger, do you remember any family activities that you would do, or was she just involved in the bowling league?
Well, she was in a bowling league. We did go watch her bowl a couple times. I never did bowl in my life. So, but she really enjoyed that, and I don't remember where they bowled or anything, but that was about the only thing. Really didn't do too many activities because, I was young and I was running around. So I really we didn't actually go to, I don't remember going to anything at had to do with Warner Gear. We did after that, after I got working there. But
what did your dad do?
My dad and mom was separated. Okay. That's another story. We'll go into all that. That'd take all day. But he used to run the farm at Massey Harris farm equipment store in Selma. That's where he first went, and we lived up above. But he ended up working for Massey Ferguson. They changed the name, of course. He worked for them until he retired. Then my mom and dad were separated, and then he was married a couple times. Then when I was a sophomore in high school, they went back together. Now, that's a short version of it. But he did retire from there and bought a cottage up at the lakes, which we spent quite a bit of time there after that. But He was actually a mechanic, and he knew what he was doing, I guess, as far as writing manuals for the dealers and stuff, how to fix something and all that. So.
Okay. So we're going to move on to your work life. How many years did you work at BorgWarner Warner Gear? It was called
Almost
Warner Gear.
33.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to work there in January of '59, and like I said, didn't know anything about anything. And everybody told me, oh, if you get on the inspection, that's a good job. Well, when I went in, I didn't know anything. I didn't wear glasses. I hated the glasses. So they had this guy, and I didn't know. I thought he was my boss, but it's what they call a lead man. And he come around and told me I was going to be on floor inspection. I'm thinking, oh, great. I heard that's good. Well, it was sweeping the floor, which was good. I'm really glad I was on labor because I got to watch people run these machines, which I had no idea what they were. So I worked non-production, and I got trained like other people. The guy I thought was a supervisor was what a lead man, and after I'd worked quite a while doing this job, well, I'll back up a little bit. First day I was there, you had to go outdoors and get the sawdust. I hated my glasses, so I put them in my pocket. And I'm shoveling this sawdust using a little building here. And I got done and no glasses. And I was scared to go back in, afraid they'd fire me the first day. So I seen some guy outside, and he told me, of course, he'd been there probably 30, 40 years, told me don't worry about it, and he took me down and got me another pair of glasses. Later, I found my glasses in the bottom of the sawdust container. But anyway, now I'm always going backwards. But anyway, then I got inside, and of course, I'm putting all this sawdust down, and I was bedding down like cattle because I'd been around cattle and stuff, on farms. Finally, after about a week, this guy told me, he said, John, why don't you just put a little layer down because you realize you're the only one doing it and everybody else is throwing on top. So I learned that. Well, and I worked real hard because I didn't want to get fired. Well, I was working in plant 1, and you had to go through this big hallway. And after I got my department looking pretty good and I didn't have to work near as hard, I thought was the boss. He comes around and he says, John, come here and I'll show you the rest of your job. Well, it was down in Department A1, which was these automatic, dirty machines, oil and all that stuff. And it was really a mess. So I'm working there. Well, then I go walking back through this hallway or an aisle. And this Jess Morgan was he was the superintendent. And he wanted to know what I was doing down the other end. And I told him what I went there to work. He said, I'm your boss. So here I've been doing this other guy's job for a week. But, that's how you learn. But then I was there a couple of years, and I decided, well, I've heard of Plant 3, but I was scared to death to go out there because everybody was telling how big it was. So anyway, I decided to go on production. You had to upgrade, so another guy and me upgraded, and I went blanking eye at that time, which was mills, drills, and broaches, and all this kind of stuff. Well, they sent me to Plant 2, and I went in there with about a couple of years seniority. Of course, it laid off a lot the first 10 years. Everybody in there had 15 years or more when I went in there. And so they'd have me run a little bit of everything. And the supervisor took a liking to me. I don't know why, but he teased me a lot. But anyway, then I got along in there, and then they'd have to put me on the night shift because, well, the way the seniority was, and people bump you if you're on all this stuff. And they'd have me run a little bit of everything, and always teasing me. I'd be working along there, and he'd let me work day or afternoons 4 days, and then come in on days on Friday. Well, then they'd put me on these machines, and I'd start running, and they'd stop. Well, I'd go down and get what they called the lead man. He'd come up there, and I'd do the same thing he done the next time, but a guy was shutting my machine off. He'd see me. They gave me a rough time, but I stayed in there, and I finally then, I was in there a few years, like I said, laid off. Then they finally sent me to Plant 3, and I was scared to death. But then when I went there, it was so much different. Because plant 1 and plant 2, always, one thing I remember was the floors. They were wood floors, looked like little bricks. But when it rained, they floated. They'd come up, and it was kind of weird. And then the machines in the tool room still had, some of them still had the old belt and pulleys that run them, which I thought was unusual. But then I went to plant 3. I'll say, I don't know what year it was, but I was out there, and then they, like I say, when you start to get laid off, they'd put you on all different kind of machines. You never knew what you was going to run. And they'd always put me on a bullard. Not always, but a lot, I'd end up on a bullard. So after several years of being moved around and running here and there and running about every department, I thought bullards paid a little more, like the way the base rate was. So I went on bullards. And I run bullards, 20-some years, I reckon, and stayed on them. And so I guess that's pretty much,
That's where you ended when you left?
Yeah, well, I went on, that's Nurse to our Union Stewart. I was in there, and I worked in C5. And, before that, I got laid off in 71 or 72. A lot of people, talked about BorgWarner never helping anybody. Well, I was laid off, and they called 4 of us. I know they called me. I wanted to know if we'd be interested in going to another factory, or if they'd get an application that they had an opening, and they was going to be laid off a long time. So I got an application, and it was from Chrysler. I thought Newcastle, but it was Kokomo. So, we talked about it, and I didn't even know where it was at. So after we did like the first year, and I said, well, it don't look like they're going to call me back for a while. So we went to Kokomo to find a plant. We found it. Well, then they hired me over, the 11th of January, whatever year that was, 72, I guess. They put me on midnights. And I was the only one from Warner Gear that I knew it was there till later, and another guy came, and then he quit before I did. And then the day I went back to Warner Gear, I think a machine repairman went over. So I think it was 4 of us, but I was the only one that went first. And I got a good job. So I think that's why I stayed. And then you got seniority in 3 months. I got my seniority, and they told me I was going to have to, I was on the midnights, I was going to have to go in the afternoons. And I said, no, I don't, I'll quit. Mm-hmm. I was kind of bullheaded. But anyway, I stayed there and worked 5 months. And, they just put me on, kept me on midnights. It was nothing compared to Warner Gear. I mean, the way they run. I couldn't understand a lot of that stuff, but pay about the same, a little less. But stayed there. Warner Gear called me back, and I asked him if it was going to be good. Looked pretty well. The same guy called me in the employment office, and he said, "Oh yeah." So I said, "I'm going to give him a week's notice." So I give them a week's notice, and then I come back to Warner Gear. I think I worked a week, got laid off again. Then I don't say what I said when they called me and wanted to know if I wanted to go back to Chrysler. But I was off a little bit, and then I went back, and then I don't think I was laid off anymore after that. Then that's when I wanted to get laid off, but I didn't. But then same thing, kind of moved around and ended up in C5. And some of the machines you still had to grind your own tools. And I wasn't too good on that, but I did learn how to do that. And so I stayed on the bullards and moved from different departments and finally ended up in C5. And then they come along here, and of course they had these committee and steward elections every year. And of course I'd been there 20-some years, I reckon. And I was the only one running this one particular job, bullard. So they come along and they had this one person that run for steward all the time, and nobody run against him. Well, every time there'd be a overtime, they got first choice. Well, he knocked a lot of people off, so everybody got mad about that. So they said, well, why don't you run for steward? I said, I don't know nothing about it. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to union meetings, I'll be honest. I did for a while, but that was something else. And so I won't get into that. So anyway, then they taught me into running. I told this one guy, he said, hey, I'll help you. He used to be a steward on the afternoon shift. And I said, okay. So I run, and I told everybody I wouldn't run only my job. So I got elected, no problem. So that's what I did. Well, they had to ask me to work overtime first before they asked anybody else. And I tell the boss, if my machine runs, well, he said, we'll make it run. So he worked with me, a real nice guy. And so I worked. If my machine worked, I run, didn't knock anybody out of the job. And then they come along and say, a couple guys on the committee, I didn't even know one of them, wanted me to be his alternate. Well, what do I do? They told me. So long story short, I did good, done an alternate committeeman, I think, for a year or so. Then they said, you might as well run, so I did, which was a mistake. And I won't get into that, but that was another thing that, I didn't realize how it worked. But I did get voted on every year, but I ended up 4 years. Well, the first year wasn't too bad. I found out right away it was different from what I thought it should have been. And a lot of things happened there I didn't know what was going on, but yeah, I did. But 4 years of that. But anyway, I stayed on. I went 4 years. Well, then in '89, when they had the strike, that was terrible. That's the first time the company actually run the machines. They were running them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They was taking people out of the office and never seen, well, I felt sorry for them, I'll be honest. But anyway, they done that, and I won't get into all that stuff because I really get aggravated. But anyway, I was out there every morning and every night about, because it got pretty wild. I never seen so many long nails, but spikes and whatever. Had a lot of problems. And so anyway, then once you're on the committee, you're supposed to go back to your job and your department. You didn't really lose anything. Well, they eliminated the bullards, no bullards. I still went back to the same department, but I had seniority, and that was something people don't like. And they didn't like to go, so-and-so's working in there. Well, I was only 51 when I retired. But anyway, nobody had shown me how. Well, they put me on a computer job, which I know nothing about computers to this day. Nobody wanted to show me anything because they didn't want me in there. It's the same people I instructed, and that's what really bugged me when they hired in there or come in there. I mean, I showed them everything, all the little tricks and how to, run grind tools and run machines at the same time and all that. But they didn't want me in there, and I understood that. Because I remember when I hired in, why didn't something, whatever guys get out of there. But anyway, then they put me on this machine, and actually I hadn't really run a machine for, 4 years, 5 years in or something. Put me on the heaviest thing in there, which I kind of hadn't done that for a while, and nobody'd show me. And when they did, it was do. They knew what they was doing, and I didn't. And then I'd get blamed. They'd say I was going, well, you're not grinding the tools. Well, I was grinding tools when they was still, wasn't born yet. But anyway, it made me mad. I'd never taken a vacation to mount anything, and we had our son was married, and they was going to have their wife's going to have a baby. So I told my wife, I said, I've got 60-some days. I'm just going to take off. Didn't get paid. I mean, we got paid before as far as that goes. And so that way we could go to Fisher's, where my son then was at. We made, I think, 6 trips in 7 days, or 7 trips in 6 days. I don't know. We've seen the baby a lot, the little girl. And but anyway, then I told her, I said, I think I'll just retire. Well, she'd been working, and I told her once before I was going to retire, so she quit before I did, but I think, because she wasn't going to let me she wasn't going to be working, me be at home, put it that way. So so anyway, then I liked a little. They'd told me this one department, they was going to start up a new department. And I decided, they said, you got enough seniority, we can keep you in there. Well, on leave, absence, or leave, vacation, I guess. So they were looking for me. They was going to try to tell me that was going to be another month before I get in there, which that would have been, January or February at that time. So finally I come down, I said, I'm just gonna retire. So I went and figured out, what I was gonna do, just told him, it was kind of a spur of a moment deal. And, but I still needed, I think, 3 or 4 days to make it. So I called the boss, or called in there, and he said, I'll give you leave of absence. And he says, you gotta come in the day you retire, because they give you a watch and a party and all this good stuff. Kick you in the rear, whatever. But anyway, I said, okay. So I went in and done that then. But there was just, I retired, and then this one foreman come around, wanted to know where I was at, because he had a job for me, and I told him it was too late and all this. And so I don't regret retiring. I missed a lot of the people. Of course, a lot of them's gone now. And I could probably go on all day about telling silly stuff, but that was mainly it. I know Warner Gear, a lot of people didn't like them, but they was wanting to give me the paycheck, although I was a union man. But I know they had these banquets, every year. I went the first one at 5 years, because I didn't know what it was all about. I've still got my pins. Well, in fact, I got one for every 5 years you got a pin. And I don't know, then they had, at one time, there was between the company and the union and the credit union, there was always something going on. And I really don't know on most of it. I know we had a couple open houses at Warner Gear. That was nice. You could take your family, because you talk about a bullet or they had no idea what you was talking about. But it did get to show them that. Like one year we was some greeters or something. That was probably when I was in the union. I'm not sure when I was a steward or something. I don't remember, but the wife was involved in that. And they had skating parties. I used to roller skate a lot, or kept the floors clean for them. But I liked to roller skate. They had them, and I think my wife said at one time that the kids, when they was little, at Rivley, there used to be a thing called the Rivley Theater in Muncie. They'd have like Christmas shows and give them candy and stuff. And I just know that there was a lot of things that, there's always sending somebody for training. I was doing a lot of that, and I never knew why, but they sent me for some of this stuff when we went on the computers. And then my boy, of course, in it'd be the early 80s, I imagine, late 70s, he went to Wapahani, and he was fairly smart. I don't know where he got it, but he was pretty smart, and they hired him at Warner Gear as a co-op student in computers. And that's when they had them big humongous thing, whatever they are. And he worked out there, and but he was bored. I mean, he couldn't keep busy. Well, that's about the time that they put our machines on what they called the computer, where there's still piece count, but that was in, I'd say, the early 80s. Because he come out to see me one day, and they was having trouble with the computer. The first thing my boss did is jumped him. So, yeah, and teased him. My boy wasn't, he was pretty quiet. And he took it serious. He thought they was bawling him out. So he didn't come out and talk to me much after that. But anyway, I come home one night, and as soon as I come in the door, I seen the telephone off the wall, and he had a cord running to his bedroom, and him and one of his buddies had this humongous computer sitting in there, hooked into our telephone. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, they told me I could bring it home for the weekend. And so at that time, it was like $6,000, I believe. It was pretty expensive. And but he was just messing with it. So then I remember the next Monday, I had to go early to work to help him take that computer back. But he did enjoy it. He had to take another year of college that way. But and that's what he does now. He's in computers. Don't ask me what he does. He's a something, but software engineer. And but anyway, he has some experience there. So, well, that gives you that much.
Yeah. So did you like your son working there? Did you really want him to be working there?
In the computer in the office. See, at that time, that was another thing that everybody wanted him to hire him. They did offer him a job. He didn't take it, kind of offered him. But that's when they quit hiring, well, employees, There when I hired in, you had to be a son's employee or, a daughter of an employee or something. They took that away. So everybody was hoping that they would hire him and then they could say, hey, you hired an employee, a son of an employee. But he didn't. In the office, I would have been all right, but I wouldn't. Well, it was getting better, I suppose, as far as machines, if you knew anything about computers, and which I didn't, and I was ready to get out, but he wouldn't have had any trouble. But I thought he was more the office type than get out there and actually, run a machine. But yeah, I would have. Well, I told a lot of people. I mean, I liked to work there. There was a good days, but once you got past the being laid off all the time, and you had a job you knew, you could pretty much stay on, I thought, until they do away with them completely. But I had, it was a good place to work. I mean, as far as money-wise, benefits, it was great. And most of the supervisors, that was another story, I won't get into that, but most of the stewards or supervisors I got along with real well.
Would you say that the benefits and such, that was the best part, or do you have something else that you really liked about Warner Gear?
Well, I never thought I'd ever work in a factory because I wanted to work outdoors. And after I was in there a while, it was a lot better than farming or outside because you didn't have to worry about the weather. But yeah, I didn't want to work in a factory, but I can't complain. It was good. It was good. It's good, like any job, I guess, good days and bad days. But
what would you say was the worst part about working there?
Well, the worst part that I didn't understand at first was the smell. It didn't really stink, but it had, my wife could tell you that, my clothes, everything. I've still got some of the old work pants, and they've got that smell to them. You don't notice it after you're in there a while, but it was, I suppose, the cutting water. Of course, they changed all that before I left, or after I left, a lot of it. But it just had a, smell. I'd say that was the worst part. And other than that, it had just like any other job. Mm-hmm. It had good points and bad points. But
did you feel like you were part of a community working there?
Well, yeah, you might say that. I mean, there was you met a lot of people, and you got involved in a lot of, different things. Well, not like bowling, but I was into CBs and into this and the skating things, of course, there's just, I don't know what you call, you met a lot of people, and now that's it right now. As long as I've been out of there and we go to town, somebody's always coming up, oh, how are you, John? And I don't remember names, faces I do, but after that strike and everything, there's a lot of them I don't know. I don't want to know who. They don't want them to know who I am because there's a lot of threats went around during that strike.
Oh my!
A lot of trouble.
When you were laid off, how long were you typically laid off for? I think you mentioned over a year, but that seemed unusual.
Usually got laid off in the winter when you couldn't do nothing else, but mostly it varied. It might be 3 months, it might be a month. That was about the longest, I think, in 72 or 71 in there. So I'd say that, and it was probably close to a year layoff on that.
Do you want to talk about the 1989 strike a little bit more? Just because you mentioned nails,
well,
and it got very violent. We don't have to.
I don't want to get into the International Union.
Okay, that's fine.
But they were nowhere to be found. But anyway, you can't take 8 or 9 people out of the factory, especially dumb as I am, and try to make do a contract right. That's what your international is for. And I think they let us down. And there's a lot of things that went on then, like this the first time the company, had their people run the machines, which should not have happened. And I felt sorry for them, I'll be honest. But that made a lot of the union people, myself included, a little upset. And so, be just like if you're working someplace and here comes somebody and runs you out and you're standing outside watching them run your machines. It didn't go over big. And so I just went out there and there was a lot of stuff going on. A lot of things happened during that I won't get into. A lot of people don't know about, but it was terrible. And my own opinion, I thought some of them, well, I'm out there thinking, well, shoot, they should have been thrown in jail. Instead of that, they give up an awful lot to get them people out of trouble, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, that's fair. You've mentioned that you've gone to the family parties, you had the skating parties, so you would say that Warner Gear was very encouraging of family life, and it sounds like the family really enjoyed those sort of activities.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was just there was probably a lot more going on, like I say, with the credit union and the union activities and the company. There was a lot of stuff going on. We used to love to go to the credit unions and thing, get together, because it's about the same people would go to all of them, and they had good crowds and everything. But we just, I don't know, you met a lot of people, families and stuff, and I don't know, you guys, if anything, use one, but it's just, I don't know, there was a lot of them you enjoyed, and there's some of them you wish you hadn't met, like any place else.
Yeah.
I'll just be honest, that's
Okay,
the way it
that's
mounted,
okay.
but I did enjoy it, and like I said, I missed a lot of the ones that was out there, and
Yeah, of course.
and it's really sad now.
Yeah, I've heard that the company was very active with organizations in the community, like Toys for Tots and that sort of thing. I don't know what it would have been, while you were there, but
Well,
would you say that it was very encouraging of getting out
I'll
in the
be honest,
community?
I don't really know. I know there was a lot, they was always doing something, and I always thought, well, there was a lot of paychecks going around Muncie too, and all around the area, that helped the community, but I know I wasn't involved in it, and I don't really know only what heard, but I know that I wasn't ashamed to tell them I worked at Warner Gear, or BorgWarner, whatever they was calling it at that time, but I wasn't ashamed to tell anybody I worked there.
Okay, so I'm going to just go back a minute. I remember you saying when your son was there that they were kind of shifting towards getting away from families, and I've kind of heard that hiring management kind of got away. They got away from hiring within Muncie, and then they hired outside. So how did you feel about that?
I won't go into all the detail because I really don't know, but I just know that I think the company actually, when Warner Gear, wanted to go that route. They wanted to keep it in the family. There was a lot of stuff went on before, like I say, I didn't get involved in the union. I just give them the devil like everybody else. But I just know that that's what happened when I hired in. That was it. And really, is that right? I don't know. I don't know if it was or not. I think it ought to be open to first come, first serve. But then I don't know where the union or the company, I don't know which one decided we're not doing that. The supervision, when I first hired in, I enjoyed that. I'd like to have somebody tell me how to do something that knew what they was talking about. It got to the place, I was offered supervision. A lot of people were offered supervision, and you had to give up your seniority. It got kind of out of whack, so they didn't get it. So they went outside and got supervisors. Now, if you're running a machine, well, like me, I was bullheaded. She'll vouch for that. If I'm running a machine that I've been around for several years, and I got somebody come, used to be a shoe salesman, tell me how to run it, we're not going to get along. And, well, we had worse than shoe salesmen, but they had a job to do, and if they didn't, they was going to get fired. And they didn't have, anybody to back them. But I still liked, when I hired in, that the guy, The foreman couldn't actually do the job, but he come up and say, hey, here's what I do, or I'll get somebody to show you. And it got to the place, and I got in some trouble with supervisors because they'd tell me what to do, and I didn't think they knew what they was doing, and I'd smart off. I got in some trouble. But that's just the way I felt. I'd much rather had the old style supervisors. Somebody that knew what the heck they were talking about, telling me what I didn't know and I wanted to know. And I did have a lot of them. I met a lot of them. And there were still some left after this other deal, but I guess that's all I want to say about that.
Okay. Did you see a lot of change while you were there?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Not a lot, I guess. Not just before I left, it was really changing. Excuse me. I went to what they called the Focus Factory, and that was one thing I didn't know about. I thought they had all these maybe little jobs to them. They know more about the finances than I did. But I couldn't see them giving up all this stuff for one big deal of Focus. Evidently it didn't work, but everything was going to that. And I never worked in there, I'll be honest, but I did spend a lot of time down there talking to guys that did, and most of them were satisfied. And I knew you had to get rid of these old machines because they were old when I started running them, or been around them. But I don't, I knew, I used to tell my wife, I'd come home and say, well, it's going to Mexico. Everything going to Mexico. And there was just a lot of stuff that you could tell was going on before, just in there running. And they'd give it what they called the gray iron over there. I'd worked over there, and that was rough. I don't know how them guys that worked there a long time ago, any of them, because that was heavy and dusty and cold over there. And I worked in there, but maybe not too long. It was a couple of weeks at a time or whatever. But it was, I thought was a big case, big transmissions. I thought, okay, they're not selling many of them, but why throw all your things in one basket? But they were able to make money. That's what companies do. And that's why there's no companies now, I guess, in there. But anyway, there were some changes. I think most of them came right, just a little before I retired. They went to this Focus and the computer.
Okay.
Well, boxes on your machines.
I don't remember if you said, what year did you retire?
91.
91.
November 91. I had, if I'd waited till January the 19th, I'd have had 33 years. But I was fed up and just, bullheaded.
That's okay.
And I said, well, I mean, after a while, people asked me, and I said, well, I do miss the paychecks. I miss buying new cars and trucks and all this stuff like I did one. But, and I missed some of the people. Some of them I didn't care if I ever seen again. But that's just, that's about it, I guess.
Okay, let's take a little break. You're over halfway done. I think the rest of it will be easy breezy. Because you were a bullard, am I saying it right?
Yeah, bullard.
Did you work specifically with the transmissions, or was it the tools to...
No, well, what you do on a bullard or phase, all they talk about that, each machine done a certain part. And then you'd get one thing done, and then the next operator would do something else, and then the next one would do something. And that's what really changed. Used to, you might have 50 people running on this one gear. Well, like the old overdrive thing, it used to be the one gear now. There were so many little pinions in it and all that stuff. But it just go down the line. Well, and they combined it. The guy ran a bollard, okay, maybe this guy run then what's called a broach. Well, they combine them. The bollard guy would run it, and then he'd broach it. And then they just keep adding something else to you, or drill a hole, which made sense. Why should one guy do it? But you're not going to tell the company, hey, I could do that too. They had suggestions, but people didn't really. You don't knock anybody out of a job. If you're running the job there and you're drilling this hole, and I could do it because I had time. But that was what happened, things like that. But actually, a bullard when you talk about tools, a bollard, you just put this, I put a rough gear on there. And then it goes around each station. It raises up and down. It keeps going around, but it automatically, or you can do it manual. But maybe I'd cut a little groove in one, and then I'd cut the outside of one, or half a, put some groove. You know, he done, everyone was different. Okay, then when I got done with it, it went down, and the guy run them on broach and cut different teeth in. So boulders, when they talk about boulders and fays and all that stuff, they were just mostly the rough cut. But then something has to make them, when they're going around, cut them gears. Well, some was like carbide tip tools, you just put them in inserts. Others you had to grind, you know, and then they'd get dull or break. There wasn't too many of them machines left. I know before I went in there, there was a lot of machines, or most of them made their own tools. Because I did work in one department, made the gear shift levers. You don't think about a lever on a transmission that you shift gears in the car. That one time there was 200 or 300 different sizes for their lawnmowers, all kind of stuff. And on that, you put just a bar of steel in it, and had one tool that actually done the cutting on that. And I never could grind that tool. I mean, to make it last. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy in there, I won't miss his name because everybody knows all them names, but he could grind the tool, and he'd make my tool, and I'd run his machine, and it'd run all day. But that's what I mean, when you're grinding tools, you had to make the tool to cut the gear, that's what it amounted to, and that was almost obsolete. And before I left, it was, because they'd done away with the bullers. Most of the falays, they called, were going, they'd went, well, updated, I guess, but that's what I mean. You talk about, they actually had a tool grinding room that ground the tools on their machines, but we had to do it on a grinding wheel.
Okay.
But
I'm going to move on to when the factory closed. So how did you feel when it was announced that it would close?
Awful sad,
Yeah.
because people, we heard about it, well, knew it was going to happen, but we hadn't been by the plant. My wife does craft shows. She does, she has for 1,000 years, as long as I've known her. But we go to craft shows, and half a dozen or more a year, getting less. But we had to go by there, and they were just starting to tear it down, and that was sad. And we went to another craft show at Yorktown, had to go by it. And then we finally went by, and it was, but I'd still try to, when I go by, I'd try to figure out, now, what's that, what department? I knew where I parked for the last 4 years, but I had my own parking spot, but I kind of watched for that, but it was sad, and I kept hoping something would go in there, but that was the sad part, seeing it down.
Just seeing it all down, did you have like a specific area? I know one woman mentioned that just seeing the bricks and piles was very sad, and for her. I
really don't, I just noticed it's just a mess, but it was when you worked in it too, but it was just sad. And like I say, we didn't go by there that much. We lived in Selma, and maybe a half dozen times we've been by it, but the last time I went by there, it was pretty well gone. Mm-hmm. And it was sad. It's still sad, because it was when Chevy and all them went down. It was sad when everybody, there's nothing here now. And that's, as far as factories, I mean, it's just sad.
I know you were already retired, but did it affect your family in any way? 'Cause I think the big hubbub was it with health insurance and retirement and all of that.
That was the worst. I don't do anything with, my wife takes care of all that. She still takes care of it because it changes all the time. Yeah. But we did go to a church or something and helped us on our insurance. But I used to go to retirees meetings, and just kind of got away from that. But they had people there to tell us. But she's done all that, and it's been complicated. And Of course, I was involved in this lawsuit that they've had ever since, and I've always said if they do get it, the lawyers already spent it. But we haven't, I don't know, for a year or so there, I had so much mail and threats and all kind of crap there, but about the insurance. But yeah, I think that was probably the biggest thing we had to deal with, because we've always had insurance, dental, and everything, and now, kaboom, you don't have nothing. I mean, well, we do have, but I mean, if she hadn't have done it, I wouldn't have done it all. In fact, she knows that. That's when you call, I don't talk on the phone unless I have to, and if I have to order pills, so we've got it fixed where she can do that now, and when there are recordings, and they call and want to talk to John, she's John. They don't know the difference. So anyway.
That's why I asked for her.
Yeah, that's why I don't talk on the phone, because I get mad halfway through, and if they call you all the time, half the time you can't understand them. But then you call them and you gotta wait, and then we just changed again on her prescription. She keeps track of all that to save the money. And so.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. To answer the question, that was probably one of the biggest things was the insurance.
Okay. So what have you been doing since you left?
Well, like I said, summertime I keep busy. Used to, when I first retired, and before I retired, I helped my son-in-law. He works a full-time job here in Muncie. Plus, he used to farm about 500 acres. And I drove a truck, tractors, whatever. Then my grandson, they had a little boy, which is he's 24 now, 24. He was driving a combine when he was 2 going down the lane. I mean, he's been on that all the time. So I lost that job. So I did mow. I used to mow about all my neighbors' yards. I don't do that now, because where we live, we was just going to live there temporary, and we've been there 50-some years. There's only one lady living there that was there when we moved in there. We've been there 50-some years, almost 60. But anyway, to answer your question is, I like to work in the yard. We don't have that big a yard. And I used to push all the snow out there. We live up a dead-end street. I still do part of that, but not like I did. And I used to always help the neighbors, because I was the youngest out there now. Now I'm the old one, and I don't know the young ones are not around there anymore. And the neighborhood's just like everything else, as far as I'm concerned. It went to pot.
Yeah.
We're getting all these, it's like a dog kennel out there now. The dogs all around barking, and of course we can't say nothing. The neighbors going, they had some stray cats, and now we got them. But other than that, it's just not the same neighborhood out there as it was. Because, there used to be a lot of kids out there, and these people move in, move out, move in, move out, and there's just been so much change there in that area. And it's, I guess I'm just old-fashioned.
That's okay. It actually kind of leads into another question that I have. Do you see a lot of differences within the community now that BorgWarner has been gone for 10 years? Would you say that it's gotten better, it's gotten worse? What are the differences that you see?
We don't get too far from home. We're about a mile north of Selma. But I think all in all, everything, the economy, factories is hurt, because I know several people work at Chevy that were here, and it's, they're not, they're not going out and buying stuff like they did. And of course now, you can't really tell what the economy is, because they didn't have credit cards when we was growing up. And now it's awful easy to, first time we used a credit card, we went to get gas and had my son-in-law showed us how to do it. So we goes down and gets the gas, puts the card in there, and we got done, and she kept looking around, and I said, "What's wrong?" She says, "Where's the cops?" It's just like you're stealing. and it's too dang easy. And I can see, people that look like, man, they're doing all that, right. But nobody knows how much they owe.
Yeah, that's actually a big thing now, credit card debt.
And
Yeah.
we know with our grandkids, then, it's just, and everybody's got these, well, we don't. We're the only ones probably in the neighborhood that don't have all the fancy computers and cell phones and stuff. But we just don't, and you talk to the older people and we don't want that. But I mean, that's the thing. And the economy, I think, definitely, there's a lot of people I think moved out around Selma that used to work at Warner Gear. That they're just not there anymore.
Right.
And, so it definitely hurt, all the factories.
Yeah. Are you still in contact with anybody that you worked with, or are they all passed on since then?
Well, most of them are gone.
Yeah.
But there's a few of them left once in a while that, I was just seeing one the other day that, like I say, I remember faces, names I don't, but this one guy comes to in. I know he'd lost his wife here a few years ago, and I think it was in some store. He come walking down there, and of course, most of them knew me from was on the committee there for a while, but this guy had worked in the gray iron, and he got talking to me, and then there's, every once in a while we'll be at a drugstore or grocery store, and somebody come up. And if they call me John, they knew me at Warner Gear. If they call me Bill, I went by Bill at school.
Okay.
So if they call me Bill, I got an idea that somebody knew me before I went to Warner Gear, because I'm John William, but I went by Bill at school, except for one school teacher, and he was right. He called me John Bill, but that's another story. I had
That's like a great story.
Yeah. But, yeah, I'd say it hurt
Okay.
quite a bit.
Do you think that we're kind of coming out of that, or do you think that we're still kind of in trouble here?
My opinion, I think Muncie's still in trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
I really do. I just don't, it's not going, I hope I'm wrong,
Right.
which I never have been. But I hope that I am wrong, but I don't think it'll ever be back like it was.
Okay. That's fair. Have you heard that they are going to be putting something in the new factory
I heard
area?
that.
What do you think about that?
Okay, it'd be all right.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have the building still sitting there with the same, something in it as to tear it down and build something new, but
Right.
I understand it needed some work.
Right. Oh, yeah. I don't think
Yeah,
they're going to use as much of the space, too.
Yeah, so I don't, I just, like I say, I've always wondered why they kept plant 1 and plant 2 and hadn't tore it down yet, but I don't think they have. I haven't been by there for a while, but.
Last time I went by there, it looked pretty empty, but, I wasn't paying as much
Yeah,
attention.
well, that's it. I just, a lot of people didn't even know the only reason they knew Plant 1 was there because that's where the employment office was at that time. But yeah, I'm glad something's building in there. I hope they fill it all up, but I don't think it'll ever happen.
Well, they do talk about expanding, but I don't think it'll be as big
I don't
as
think
the original plant from the sounds of it. Well, that was my last question. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I've probably said more than I should have right now.
That's okay.
But,
I like
just,
hearing you.
I don't know anything.
Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I remember him coming home years and years ago,
Yeah.
talking about, he worried about the jobs going to Mexico. And just look at what has happened to the
Mhm.
jobs.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah,
They're
no,
gone.
that is fair. Yeah, all these factories are shut down, and that was the lifeblood of Muncie for the longest
It
time.
really was.
So,
Yeah, we know a lot of people that
Mhm.
maybe they didn't work there long, but they worked there for a while.
yeah. And everybody seems to think fondly of the time that they worked there, but now that they were out of it, they were kind of glad to be out of it
Yeah.
too.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think once you got some seniority and you knew what she's going to do every day, and she never could understand why I could just do the same thing over and over every day. But it got where, but, yeah, I used to, well, when I'd worry they put me on a new job, I'd be a nervous wreck and I'd stew about it, and then I didn't know what I was doing, and usually it worked out, but part of the time it didn't, and put you in nice all by yourself, and only see a guard go by once in a while, and it's kind of, I hated it.
Right.
But then got through that.
Well, it was like a challenge. You had so many pieces you had to make in a certain amount of time, and he'd come home some days and he'd say, well, I'm this much ahead.
Yeah. Well, I knew how to, grind tools and stuff, and then my bosses, that's why I say they knew, because a lot of times I'd have enough ahead, I didn't have to even start my machine up on Friday.
Right.
Because I'd just run that before they come to the computer, and then my boss come around and he said, John, I know you're done for the day, but he said, I need some of these such and such gears, I said, I think I can handle that. And he knew it, but he knew it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd just run them through, get the oil off of them, send them through, and he'd say, I'd say, how many you need? He'd tell me, and I'd give him what. But, it was, that's why I say he was one of the older guys, or older foremen.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he just passed away not too long ago, but a lot of people didn't like him, but I did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like some of the younger ones, but there was just, they were different. And that wasn't their fault, but I was hard to get along with.
They could have been hard to get along with, too.
What?
They could have been hard to get along with, too. It might not have just been you.
Well, no, it was me.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had to get mad at me because I'd give him, I was nice.
Yeah.
I was nice.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you worked. Did you have people in there that wouldn't work? They just kind of horsed around, or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to say anything
No,
about
I
that
won't
if
say
you don't.
no.
Yeah.
I won't say nothing bad, but there was a lot of people that really worked hard and really worried about it. And you had a handful that could care less, and they didn't care if they run good stuff or bad stuff. Well, that's stuff like that's why they're not here now. They run, you gotta, everybody runs something a little bit shaky once in a while. But when you just sit there and know you're doing stuff and not even checking them, or, so what? Get so many pieces, I got them, but most of them wasn't worth the, yeah, that bothered me, but okay, that was another thing. I'll get on to that. You're a company man, okay, never mind. But I've been through a lot of that stuff, but yeah, there's a lot of them that worked awful hard to cover up these others, and I always told her is actually that's our job. We're trying to make the place run. You got some yahoo out here who don't care what he's doing.
Did you have a lot of pride in
I
that?
mean, I can say all of us run some stuff a little bit shaky, but not some of that stuff was past shaky.
Right. Yeah. All right. Anything else? No?
No,
Okay. All right. Well, then you're
if
free
she
to go.
edits enough of it out, I'm